a story you'll definitely want to hear to the end. Chapter 1: A Poisonous Morning. The morning in the Harrison household began with a silence so thick you could cut it with a knife and spread it on your toast instead of butter. Vera, a fragile woman with the eyes of a frightened doe, had been circling the kitchen for an hour trying to please her mother-in-law, Beatrice, a woman as monumental as a statue of herself. Today marked exactly 5 years since Vera had first crossed the threshold of this house, and with each passing year, the atmosphere within it had grown more suffocating. "And why are you fluttering about like you have ants in your pants?" Beatrice's bass voice boomed, her heavy, leaden gaze fixing on Vera. "It's not like you're any use anyway. For 5 years, you've been living off my son, with everything handed to you on a silver platter. You'd think your conscience would prick you at least once." Vera flinched as if struck. Her mother-in-law's words, habitually venomous, burned with a fresh sting today. She silently placed a cup of steaming coffee in front of her, the aroma of which seemed to instantly dissolve in the poisonous fumes of the matriarch's anger. "My darling boy, my own flesh and blood, works his fingers to the bone day and night so that you, my dear, can parade around in silks and stuff yourself with pastries," Beatrice continued, spittle flying from her lips. "And you? What are you? A nobody, no job, no children. All you know is how to squander his money." Vera swallowed the lump that had risen in her throat. She wanted to scream, to argue, to unleash all the bitterness that had accumulated in her soul over these years. But she only clenched her fists tighter, her nails digging painfully into her palms. She knew that any word would be used against her. "Mother, stop it," came the quiet voice of Leo, her husband, from behind her. He stood in the kitchen doorway, pale and drawn, with dark circles under his eyes. His appearance, however, only added fuel to the fire. "And here he is, my long-suffering son. Look at him. What has he become? She sucked all the life out of him, every last drop of blood. And what does he do? He still defies his mother, standing up for his little leech." Leo sighed heavily and walked over to Vera, putting an arm around her shoulders. This gesture, full of tenderness and desperation, was the last straw for Beatrice. She jumped up, knocking over her chair, her face contorted into a mask of such fierce hatred that Vera involuntarily recoiled. "Out!" she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at the door. "Get out of my house, you freeloader! I want you gone! And you, my son, if you don't want to say goodbye to me forever, choose. It's either me or her." In the silence that followed, only Beatrice's heavy, ragged breathing could be heard. Vera, curled into a ball of fear, looked at her husband, her eyes filled with a silent question upon whose answer her entire future depended. Leo was silent, and his silence was more terrifying than any scream. Time seemed to stop, to freeze, turning into a thick, sticky substance with no escape. And at that very moment, when the tension reached its peak, the mailman walked into the kitchen, whistling cheerfully, holding a thick, heavy envelope. It was addressed to Vera. And what was inside was about to detonate this house, sweeping away all its familiar foundations, all the lies, all the rot that had been hidden for so long under a mask of respectability. Chapter 2: A Letter from Hell. The mailman, an elderly man with tired, kind eyes, seemed completely oblivious to the storm raging within the walls of the house. He smiled as he handed Vera the envelope, on which her name was written in Gothic script. "Registered mail for you, Vera," he said with a wink. "Looks like your rich uncle finally came through." The joke hung in the air, failing to elicit even a hint of a smile from anyone. Vera mechanically took the envelope, her fingers trembling. It was made of thick, expensive paper, with a wax seal bearing an intricate coat of arms. It exuded a chill of mystery, something foreign and otherworldly. "What's this nonsense?" Beatrice hissed, eyeing the letter with suspicion. "Did you take out more loans, you spendthrift? Are you trying to bankrupt my son?" Vera didn't answer. She slowly, as if afraid to getting burned, opened the envelope. Inside were several sheets of paper covered in calligraphic handwriting and a photograph. It was an old, yellowed photo of a handsome young man in a military uniform. His piercing, dark eyes seemed to look right into her soul. Vera shuddered. She knew those eyes. She saw them every day in the mirror. They were her father's eyes, the father she had never known, whom she believed had died before she was born. The lines of the letter danced before her eyes, blurring into an indecipherable haze. "My dearest Veronica," the letter began. "If you are reading these lines, it means I am no longer among the living. My name is Baron von Stromberg, and I am your father." The world swayed and swam before her. Vera grabbed the table to keep from falling. A baron? Her father? It couldn't be. It had to be some cruel, absurd joke. But the longer she stared at the face in the photograph, the more clearly she understood it was true. An unbelievable, shocking, but undeniable truth. "What have you got there?" Beatrice couldn't stand it any longer, snatching the letter from her weakened hands. "Here, let me see that." She devoured the text, and as she read, her expression changed. First there was bewilderment, then disbelief, which was replaced by a greedy glint in her eyes. "A baron?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "An estate? A castle in Bavaria?" She looked up at Vera, and the old hatred was gone from her eyes. Now they were filled with a sticky, fawning delight. She looked at her daughter-in-law the way one looks at a winning lottery ticket. "Vera, my dear daughter," she stammered, trying to force a smile onto her face. But the smile was ghastly, predatory, revealing her decaying teeth. At that moment, Leo re-entered the kitchen. He looked with surprise at his mother, at his wife, at the letter in Beatrice's hands. "What is going on here?" he asked, a note of alarm in his voice. "My son, oh, what joy!" Beatrice cried, throwing herself at his neck. "Our Vera isn't just some poor little orphan. She's a baroness, the heiress to an immense fortune. We're going to be rich. We'll be dripping in silks, bathing in gold." Leo stared at his mother, bewildered, then shifted his gaze to Vera. She stood as pale as a sheet, staring blankly into space. A look of sheer terror was frozen in her eyes. She understood. The hell she had been living in for all these years was only just beginning. And this new hell was far more terrifying than the last. The news of Vera's sudden inheritance had the effect of a bomb exploding in the house. Beatrice, who just yesterday was ready to throw her daughter-in-law out onto the street, now hovered around her like a vulture over its prey. She looked at her with fawning eyes, calling her "my daughter" and "our savior," bringing her coffee in bed and inquiring about her health with such cloying concern that it made Vera sick. Leo seemed just as bewildered as Vera. He silently watched the metamorphosis his mother had undergone, his eyes full of confusion and a kind of hidden pain. He tried to talk to Vera, but she avoided the conversation, withdrawing into herself. The shock of the news about her father, the Baron, and his inheritance was too great. One evening, while sorting through old things in the attic, Vera came across a dusty photo album. She opened it, and the sense of the past, of a time she had never known, wafted over her. On the yellowed cardboard pages were photographs. Here was her mother, very young, with a radiant smile. Here she was with a young man Vera had never seen before. They stood in an embrace, their faces glowing with happiness. She turned the page and froze. The next photograph captured a wedding. Her mother was in a modest white dress, next to the same young man. But standing beside them, off to the side, was another man, tall, stately, in an expensive suit, with a cold, piercing gaze. Vera felt a chill run down her spine. It was him, Baron von Stromberg, her father. Beneath the photograph, in a trembling hand, was written, "The wedding of Leo and—" The rest of the name was scratched out. Vera looks closer. Leo? But that was her husband's name. She looked again at the young man standing next to her mother. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just some stranger. It was her husband, Leo, only 20 years younger. Her world collapsed. Everything she had believed in, everything that had formed the foundation of her life, turned out to be a lie. Her husband? He had been married to her mother? And the Baron? Who was he in this story? A lover? A father? Vera frantically flipped through the album, and with each new photograph, the monstrous truth became clearer. Here was her mother, her belly noticeably swollen, standing next to the Baron. And here was Leo, his face contorted with rage, yelling at her. And the last photograph? Her mother, lying on the ground in a pool of blood. And standing over her, a smoking pistol in his hand, was Leo. Vera screamed, a wild, gut-wrenching scream like that of a wounded animal. She understood everything. Her mother hadn't died of an illness, as she had been told her whole life. She had been murdered, and the killer was her husband, the man with whom she had shared a bed all these years. And her mother-in-law, that sainted woman, that long-suffering soul, she knew everything. She was an accomplice. At that moment, the attic door flew open, and Leo appeared on the threshold. In his hands was the very same pistol from the old photograph. "You found out," he said quietly, and there was not a shred of remorse in his voice. "Too bad. I enjoyed playing this game with you, but now I'm afraid it has to end." Chapter 4. The Monster's Confession. Vera stood paralyzed by terror, unable to tear her eyes away from the black muzzle of the pistol aimed directly at her heart. A whirlwind of thoughts, fragments of memories, now pieced themselves together into a single monstrous picture. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why did you do this to me?" Leo smirked. It was a terrible smirk that twisted his handsome face into a devil's mask. "Why?" he repeated, savoring each word. "You really want to know? Fine, I'll tell you. It will be my last confession before I send you to join your mommy." He stepped closer, and Vera could smell the alcohol on his breath. His eyes burned with a mad fire. "Your mother," he began, his voice laced with hatred, "was a whore, a first-class, bona fide whore. I loved her. I was crazy about her, and she traded me for that old goat, for your Baron daddy. Sold herself for his title, for his castles, for his filthy money." He spoke, and with every word, his rage grew. "I begged her to come to her senses, to come back to me. But she just laughed in my face. Said I was a nobody, that I wasn't even worthy of her little finger. And so I decided that if I couldn't have her, no one could." He paused, catching his breath. Vera looked at him, and two feelings warred within her soul: terror and disgust. "I killed her," he continued with chilling calmness. "Shot her like a rabid dog. And then I found you. You looked so much like her, just as beautiful, just as naive. And I decided that you would pay for your mother's sins. I would make you suffer, just as I had suffered. I would marry you, make your life a living hell, and then I would kill you. And you know what the funniest part is? My mother, that sainted woman, she knew everything. She helped me. She hated your mother even more than I did. You see, the Baron was once her lover, but he left her for your mother. Such is the irony of fate." He laughed, a loud, hysterical laugh. And in that laugh, there was so much pain, so much hatred, so much madness, that Vera's blood ran cold. "And now," he said, raising the pistol again, "it's time to say goodbye, my dear little wife. Or maybe I should call you my daughter. Oh, what does it matter? You'll find out soon enough. On the other side." He cocked the hammer. Vera squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the shot. But instead, she heard a deafening blast, a scream, and the sound of a body falling. She opened her eyes. Leo was lying on the floor in a pool of blood, and standing over him, a smoking shotgun in her hands, was Beatrice. "No one," she snarled, her face a mask of fury. "No one hurts my little girl. No one." Chapter 5. Righteous Fury. Vera stared at Leo's body sprawled on the floor, at her mother-in-law clutching the old hunting rifle, and could not believe what was happening. Her world had been turned upside down. Black was white, and white was black. The monster who had tormented her for all these years turned out to be a victim, and the sainted martyr, a cold-blooded killer. "Mother, what have you done?" Vera whispered, but her voice was lost in the dead silence of the attic. Beatrice slowly lowered the rifle. Her face, a moment ago contorted with rage, returned to its usual long-suffering expression. She looked at Vera, and tears welled up in her eyes. "He wanted to kill you, my dear," she said in a trembling voice. "I couldn't let that happen. You're all I have left. You are my hope for a better life. You are my Baroness." And in that moment, Vera understood. Beatrice had not killed her own son out of love for her or out of remorse. She had killed him out of fear of losing what she believed was rightfully hers, the Baron's inheritance. She wasn't protecting Vera. She was protecting her future millions, her castles in Bavaria, her new, luxurious life. Righteous fury, the kind you read about in books, crashed over Vera with such force that she could barely breathe. All the pity, all the fear, all the confusion she had felt just a minute ago were replaced by one all-consuming feeling: hatred. Hatred for this woman who had destroyed her life, who had turned her into a pawn in her dirty games, who had killed her own son for money. "You are a monster," Vera breathed, her voice firm and cold. Beatrice flinched. She expected anything: gratitude, tears, histrionics, but not this icy calm, not this contempt in the eyes of the one she considered her docile little lamb. "My dear, how can you?" she whined, trying to embrace Vera. "I saved your life." "Don't touch me," Vera recoiled. "You killed your son. You've been lying to me my whole life. You are a murderer and a hypocrite, and you will pay for everything." She turned and walked toward the exit. Beatrice watched her go, a look of horror on her face. She realized she had lost, that all her plans, all her hopes had crumbled in an instant, that she was left alone with her son's corpse at her feet and the brand of a murderer for the rest of her life. Vera descended from the attic and, without looking back, walked to the front door. She didn't know what lay ahead, what kind of life would begin for her beyond the threshold of this cursed house, but she knew one thing: she would never be a victim again. She would be strong. She would fight. For herself, for her mother, for her stolen life. Stepping outside, she took a deep breath of the fresh, clean air. For the first time in many years, she felt free. And in that moment, looking at the rising sun, she laughed. A loud, rolling, liberating laugh. It was the laugh of a person who had walked through hell and survived. A laugh in which pain, pity, and righteous anger were all mixed together. And somewhere in that laugh, in its deepest, most hidden notes, a new, previously unknown power was already beginning to form. The power of forgiveness. But that was still a long, long way off. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and you'll hear even more thrilling tales.